God-level duplication system. Chapter 71. Inner Sanctum. Everyone looked at this scene and couldn't believe it. Such cultivation speed, they didn't even dare to think about it. But now, it happened right in front of their eyes. They felt as if they were in a dream. However, many of them were chi transformation stages, or even condensation spin stages. They could sense Lin Xuan's chi. Lin Xuan had indeed reached the chi transformation stage. This meant that Lin Xuan had successfully broken through to chi transformation stage level 1 in just 4 days. Everyone was even more shocked. They were shocked by Lin Xuan's talent. Lin Xuan's performance during the outer sect competition was enough to shock them. However, they still underestimated Lin Xuan. Lin Xuan's talent was much stronger than the rumors. He could probably be ranked at the top of the sect. No one dared to think about it anymore. They could only sink into deep shock. After Deacon Sun returned to his senses, although his eyes were still filled with shock, he squeezed out a smile and said, "Wait a moment. I will go and invite the second elder now." Lin Xuan's talent was shocking. He didn't dare to delay Lin Xuan's time. After saying that, Deacon Sun immediately rushed into the depths of Outer Hall. Not long after, Deacon Sun brought a man with him. That man wasn't the second elder, but the Grand Elder. Everyone was shocked when they saw Grand Elder walking towards them with quick steps. They never thought that the person who came out would be the Grand Elder. The Grand Elder of the Outer Sect was in charge of everything in the Outer Sect. He was the person with the highest status in the Outer Sect. Outer Hall was under his control. However, Grand Elder had his own matters to attend to, so he rarely showed himself. Usually, the second elder was in charge of these matters. For example, the disciples of the Outer Sect had advanced to the Inner Sect. But this time, it was Grand Elder who took the initiative to come out. This showed how much importance he attached to Lin Xuan. Grand Elder's eyes fell upon Lin Xuan. When he sensed Lin Xuan's chi, he was shocked as well. "You are going to enter the Inner Sect so soon." The Grand Elder said it with a smile. Lin Xuan's cultivation speed had shocked him. As the Grand Elder of the Outer Sect, he knew almost all the disciples of the Outer Sect had entered the Inner Sect. From the beginner level to the Inner Sect, Lin Xuan had only used a few days of time. Apart from Lin Xuan, no one else had been able to do this. Even the chief successor disciple, Lu Qianya, and the other true disciples couldn't do this. It seemed like Lin Xuan's talent was much higher than he had imagined. Grand Elder thought to himself. When Lin Xuan heard this, he bowed and said, "I have broken through to the chi transformation stage, and I want to enter the Inner Sect. Please accept my request." "Alright." Grand Elder nodded slightly and said with a faint smile. "With your talent, it would be a waste for you to stay in Outer Sect. Come with me." After that, Grand Elder led Lin Xuan into the depths of Outer Hall under the gazes of everyone present. They walked through the process of entering the Inner Sect. In fact, there wasn't much of this process. It was to change Lin Xuan's identity card into a new disciple identity card of the Inner Sect, as well as the special uniform of the Inner Sect and his rank into the register. The Grand Elder gave Lin Xuan the resources of the Inner Sect for the first month. 10 minutes later, everything was completed. Grand Elder called over a disciple from the Inner Sect who was on duty in Outer Hall and said, "Zhou Yu, bring Lin Xuan to the Inner Sect. On the way there, tell Lin Xuan about the general situation of the Inner Sect, and come back after Lin Xuan is settled down." "Yes, Elder Chen." Zhou Yu bowed in reply. He looked at Lin Xuan and cupped his hands. "Junior brother Lin, let's go." "Alright," Lin Xuan said. Lin Xuan's eye swept across and looked at Zhou Yu's attribute panel. He secretly sighed with emotion. Apart from Chen Yuzi, Zhou Yu's talent was about the same as Zhou Lai's and Guan Yuanchuang's. He was just an ordinary disciple of the Inner Sect. It could be seen that the Inner Sect was much stronger than the Outer Sect. After that, they walked out of a huge door in the depths of the Outer Hall. They arrived in another vast world. The buildings and palaces were even more luxurious, and the natural energy was also richer. This was the Inner Sect. This was the Central Region domain. The Outer Sect was only at the border of the Outer Region. Grand Elder looked at the back of Lin Xuan and sighed. "Lin Xuan, the sect didn't give you special treatment because of your talent. You have to compete for everything." As for how far you can go, that will depend on you. He was also looking forward to the day Lin Xuan rose to power. Along the way, Lin Xuan looked around at the fairyland that he had described in his previous life. He was shocked. Zhou Yu also carried out the task given to him by the Grand Elder. He told Lin Xuan about the situation in the inner sect. The inner sect was different from the outer sect, and the inner sect was more detailed. The inner sect had many branches. For example, the Pill Refining Hall, the Craft Refining Hall, the Formation Hall, and the Mission Hall. The outer sect only had the Outer Hall, Clan Mission Hall, and Golden Origin Hall. Only the disciples of the outer sect who had broken through to the Qi transformation stage could become disciples of the inner sect. Every disciple of the inner sect was once a top disciple of the outer sect. Therefore, there were only about 500 disciples in the inner sect. This was far less than the number of disciples of the outer sect. Moreover, there was a huge difference between the disciples of the inner sect. They were divided into ordinary disciples of the inner sect, elites of the inner sect, and elite disciples. Ordinary disciples of the inner sect were those with ordinary talent, a low cultivation base, the Qi transformation stage, or newly recruited disciples of the inner sect. The elites of the inner sect were talented disciples. They weren't older than 24 years old. Furthermore, their cultivation base had reached the condensation spin stage. The requirement for elite disciples was even higher. Every disciple was at least at the condensation spin stage peak, and their talent was very high. Furthermore, they had a chance of becoming true disciples. Each elite disciple could be said to be one of the top disciples in the inner sect, whether it was in terms of strength or talent. There were over 500 disciples in the inner sect, but there were only 36 elite disciples. This showed how powerful they were. For a disciple like Lin Xuan, who had just entered the inner sect, he was just an ordinary disciple. His treatment was also the worst in the inner sect. Lin Xuan listened attentively. He now had a certain understanding of the situation in the inner sect. 10 minutes later, Zhou Yu brought Lin Xuan to a small house. This was the residence of the ordinary disciples of the inner sect. Although this place looked very ordinary, it was a room and a living room. This was much better than the outer sect. After Zhou Yu explained the situation, he also helped Lin Xuan choose a suitable small house. He prepared to go back. Before leaving, Zhou Yu said solemnly, "Junior brother Lin, the inner sect is not like the outer sect. The resources and benefits here are greater, but the competition is also crueler. Some seemingly unacceptable actions were allowed in the inner sect. You have to be prepared. This is all I can say. I hope you have a pleasant life in inner sect." Then he patted Lin Xuan's shoulder and left. Lin Xuan was still a little puzzled. However, he still had some confidence in his own strength. He ignored Zhou Yu's words. He started to clean up the house. He spent half an hour settling everything. However, he didn't have time to sit down and rest.